Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941, a date that will live in infamy. The first ever attack on American soil. This documentary will go over 6 reasons why Pearl Harbor broke a psychological barrier for all Americans. But before that, we must go over why the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. This date in infamy left our nation crippled, and the Japanese did this because they had an issue with 3 things. Number 1, the Japanese had an increasing need for resources such as gas, oil, gold, copper, coal, iron, and etc. for their expansion in Asia and the Pacific. Number 2, and because of their hostile ways that began in the 1930s when Japan aggressively expanded their territories under its influence, taking over parts of China, invading territories claimed by the Soviet Union, and fighting across the Pacific during World War II, we refused to give them any of these resources, which enraged them. Number 3, because of our expansion from California to Hawaii in the Pacific, this was a threat to Japan, so because of the Japanese's short fuse, they bombed Pearl Harbor. The first reason Pearl Harbor broke a psychological barrier is the fact that it even happened. Now, first off, no one ever expected us to join the war, so clearly no one expected us to get attacked. Anyways, Japan sent 353 planes to Pearl Harbor, 40 of which was torpedo bombers, which sunk 18 U.S. ships. So the fact that an attack this devastating came out of nowhere left people in fear that this might happen again. Did you know Congress was so scared that our president would get attacked after Pearl Harbor that they built the first White House bunker that was designed to withstand multiple direct hits of 200 to 300 megaton weapons bursting at the surface, or 100 MT weapons penetrating to depths of 70 to 100 feet? The second reason Pearl Harbor broke a psychological barrier was of all the casualties we had. Now before we move on, let's take a moment to remember the fallen. They were the sons and the brothers of the United States. Some of these people that died were Captain Franklin Van Valkenburg, Captain of the USS Arizona, and Captain Mervyn S. Binion, Captain of the USS West Virginia. Okay, now when the death count came out and every day just kept adding up, so many people were just astonished by this. When the official death total came out, I estimate about 2,400 dead. That's 5 times more than the Battle of Oriskany, the bloodiest battle of the American Revolution. So as you can imagine, people were just flabbergasted by this. The third reason why Pearl Harbor broke a psychological barrier is what happened to the innocent Japanese citizens. After Pearl Harbor, everyone was just so enraged and scared that they took it out on the innocent Japanese that were American citizens. President Roosevelt did something called the internment of Japanese Americans. If you don't know what this means, President Roosevelt ordered the relocation of Japanese Americans to concentration camps, where they starved, got sicknesses, dehydrated, and etc. A total of 1,862 people died from medical problems while in concentration camps, and about 1 out of 10 of these people died from tuberculosis in these camps, which is just plain heartbreaking that this would happen to some people that didn't even do anything wrong. The fourth reason Pearl Harbor broke a psychological barrier was the fact that it was a war crime. So, a few hours before Pearl Harbor, Japan gave the U.S. peace medals, so we wouldn't expect an attack from them. And according to Article 1 of the 1907 Hague Convention III, the opening of hostiles, an attack performed without previous and explicit warning, was against international law. And although Japan did compose a warning to the United States, it was not delivered until an hour after the attack was launched. So to shorten it up, it was an act of cowardice and deceit. The fifth reason Pearl Harbor broke a psychological barrier is that women went in the jobs never held by any females before. Now, back in the 40s, women were expected to just be at home and take care of the family, or have office jobs or seamstress positions such as telephone operators or nurses. So when the time of war dawned upon the nation, it sent people straight to the factories. And since all the men were out fighting in the war, the US needed the women to get into the workplace. So posters like this and like this were put all over walls, buildings, everything where women could see them. This led to women doing more jobs stereotyped for men at that time period. The sixth reason Pearl Harbor broke a psychological barrier is that the first African American to be awarded the Navy Cross. Doris Miller was a third-class American messman on the USS West Virginia during the time of the attack. And without knowledge, manned an anti-aircraft guns by his injured captain's side till ordered to leave the abandoned ship. And because of his heroic actions, more African Americans joined the Army. And this is a time of segregation, so African Americans weren't even expected to do the same stuff as white people. But he did just that. Doris Miller is an example of a man who went above and beyond the call of duty. So, in conclusion, Pearl Harbor didn't just break a psychological barrier, it destroyed it. The reasons why it destroyed a psychological barrier is because, one, it just happened out of obscurity. Number two, all the American soldiers and civilian casualties. May they rest in peace now. Number three, what happened to the innocent Japanese citizens? Number four, the fact that it was a war crime, an act of cowardice. Number five, women in the jobs never held by any females before. And number six, the first African American to ever receive a Navy Yoke Cross. Well, my name is Jameson Harvey, and this has been my documentary. I hope you have enjoyed it.